Today I'm going to take a few minutes to weld up the square frame that I need to mount the lock plate to the piece of sheet metal that I'm going to be using for the cover of the box. So here's the frame that I made earlier. This is the ring that is going to be at the top edge of the box. And when the lid is closed, the lock is going to latch onto this ring, and it's going to look like this from inside the box. The frame that I'm making today is going to attach to the back plate of the lock, and it's going to stick out past the edge of the lock plate. So it's basically going to be the same size as the ring that I just showed you, and I'm going to be using this frame to be able to mount the lock plate to the cover of the box. So the frame's going to wrap around the whole lock and look something like this. And as I mentioned earlier, when the lid is closed, the edges of the frame are going to line up exactly with the ring that I forged for the top of the box. So once I have the frame welded up, I'll have the two pieces that I need to assemble the box, because the box itself gets built around the ring and the frame is going to be used to assemble the lid. So if I make sure that the frame that I built today is the same size as the ring that I built earlier, I can assemble both halves without having to worry about them fitting together, because if they fit the two parts and the two parts fit together, then the whole thing is going to work. The reason I built the lid of the box in two halves to begin with is because this is what the back of the lock looks like, and if the lid was only one layer, that's what you'd see on the surface. So by having two layers, I can keep all of this hidden and only have the parts on the lid that belong to the actual outside of the box. Also, by building it in layers, I can make a very sturdy lid without having to cut through a 1/4-inch solid plate to be able to assemble this lock. I'm going to be using the ring as the pattern for the frame, because if the ring is a little bit off, then the frame has to be a little bit off to match it. So, I've built the ring as square and as even as I can, but there are going to be irregularities. It's almost impossible to not have something a little bit off. So by making sure that everything conforms to the ring, and I'm making sure that everything stays in the same relationship, then the box is going to come out looking okay, even though it may be a little bit off. So here I have the pieces cut, and these two weird pieces are the back stretchers for the frame. And the reason that they have that little horizontal tab on each side is because that's the only part of the frame that I'm going to be welding to the top piece, which has a standard miter on it. There's only a small part of this frame that's showing beyond the lock plate, so I'm not going to bother welding this whole miter. I'm just welding the very edges of the frame. Everything else is going to get riveted to the back plate of the lock, so I don't need to weld it for any strength. I mean, I'm just welding this so that it looks like it's forge welded. It just has to appear forge welded. It doesn't even matter if it is forge welded. Here I have the frame tack welded together to make it a little easier to handle in the fire. This piece is so thin, I didn't want to have to worry about the piece cooling down at all. So I wanted it to go in the fire as one piece and come out as one piece, so the two halves can help to conserve the heat until I get to the anvil. Another method for this kind of thing that was commonly used was to put a small rivet to hold pieces together until you could get them welded. These pieces are so light, so small, the heat dissipates very quickly, so you really can't be messing around with a lot. You got to take them out of the fire, weld them right away. And for me, tacking them with an arc welder was the simplest way to do it. It's on the back of the piece, it isn't going to be seen, and it's not contributing any strength to the piece. They're still forge welded. It's just, I need to tack weld it because I don't have an extra set of hands to work with. I'm just taking one welding heat for each corner. I don't want to thin out the pieces too much. I just need them to look like they've been welded. Again, there's very little of this plate showing outside the log, so I just need something that looks forged.